gosh, I guess I started here in March of about 1977, which is probably before some of my fellow employees were even born. When I first started here, we had no formal onboarding as we have today. Harold just kind of propped me up in front of a 4-drawer file cabinet and said, just go through and get names and numbers of customers and get a list of people who we do business with and go out and see them, and you'll be fine.
I started working at HM Cragg in 1977. Late in 1976, Harold Craig and Bill Ruva had sent out a calendar to all their new customers along with a little postcard saying, do you want free battery inspections? And they were inundated with responses to those requests, and they weren't going to be able to handle it, so Harold and Bill got to talking, and Bill said, I know a guy, doesn't have a job, he could come in on a part-time basis and run around check batteries for us. I did that in early 77 and became a full-time employee in May of 77. I think the earliest memories would have been having Bill Ruva schedule a battery inspection that would get me up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go do battery inspections in a freezer at Super Value.
I started working at HM Cragg in December of 1993. My earliest memory of working at HM Cragg, I believe it was my second day on the job. I had to go on a service call. I was hired as a service technician, and I went with a gentleman by the name of Dean Belsheim. And he had been here a while, and we had to fix a forklift battery charger at a dog chow factory. And it was probably the single worst working environment I've ever been in my entire time here at HM Cragg. It smelled, the floor was coated with gooey, slimy, slippery dog food, and it was really not very pleasant at all.
I started working at HM Cragg in June 30th, 2000. My earliest memory of HM Cragg was when I first came in for the interview, walking through the shop, and it was mainly a forklift battery company where they rebuilt the batteries, and it had a really bad smell to it from all the acid.
I started working at HM Cragg January 27th of 2002. 16 years, time really went fast. My earliest memory at HM Cragg, which was kind of a surprise to me, was coming in one morning and the whole place smelled like rotten eggs. I wasn't expecting that, and I didn't know what it was at first, but it happened many times after that. It was the batteries overcooking with the motive power division that we had.
Started with HM Cragg in January of 2008. My first memory was I went into a cubicle. I was brought in to head up operations. And I went into a cubicle right next to Dale. And I couldn't believe how messy Dale's office was. And not only that, Dale didn't speak to me for the first 6 months that I was here.
I first started working at HM Cragg in August of 2009. This summer it will be 9 years. My earliest memory working at HM Cragg is probably just working here by myself. It was the only time that I got away from the kids. And I worked on Sundays when nobody was in the office, because at that time we didn't even have internet at our house. And so I got a lot done. Every once in a while somebody would sneak through and it would just scare me to death.
I have been working with HM Cragg for over 10 years, actually longer than I've owned my business, Core Talent. I remember the old building on Washington Avenue, and I remember it because I always thought that HM Cragg could use a little glamming up, so to speak, of that building, and they certainly did.
I started working at HM Cragg in April of 2013, so it's been just about coming up on 5 years. So one of my earliest memories was actually before I started working at HM Cragg, and I had my final interview with Jim, and I went in, and the first thing he did was he laid some blueprints on the table, and he said, "This is our new office," and I didn't know we were moving, and I was hoping it wasn't going to be someplace up in Elk River that would triple my commute. So that was actually 3 days before I started.
Okay, when I first started here, I believe I was number 5 or 6 on the list. There was Harold Cragg, Bill Ruva. We had an office manager, Bob Strong. We had a secretary, and we had one full-time employee. At the time, our service department was all contract people, folks that worked on the batteries themselves. So like I said, I think I was number 5 or 6 on the list.
When I started in '77, I think it was a week after or a week before Roger, there was either 7 or 8 of us.
When I was hired, I was employee number 13.
When I first started working at HM Cragg, there were, I'm thinking about 17 people working here.
In 2002, when I started here, there was around 26 people here. It really kind of felt like family.
As I remember, there were about 20 people, 20 to 22 at HM Cragg at the time.
When I first started here, there were probably somewhere in the 30 of it, the employees were somewhere in the 30s. Now we're at about 65, so they've essentially doubled in the 9 years I've been here.
Well, the biggest change, obviously, was going from just a handful to 65, maybe, employees at the time. Obviously, that's a big change. And then just, you know, when I started, there was no computers. I mean, Harold Cragg agonized over buying the fax machine. Before that, all we had in the office was a couple of phones and the old, it was called, we referred it to as a Twix machine, where everything was key punched. All the orders were key punched on a card of some sort, and received at C&D magically. But there was, you know, we had an adding machine on our desk, that was about it.
The biggest change in the company since I started has been when we added the Eaton distribution business. That's what expanded us to be nationwide, having sales reps in other states and needing more space to house all the inventory. So that's by far, I think, the biggest change since I started.
Business at HM Cragg has changed drastically since I started working here. We were still filing invoices by hand in filing cabinets. Now everything's done on computers, so that kind of tells you where we were at the time. Everything was done with paper.
The biggest change I think I've seen over the years is the size of our company in terms of number of employees and locations, as well as the diversity of the equipment that we sell. The technology change has been quite extensive. Back in the day, we used to enter our orders at the end of the day on a teletype machine, and there'd be a little yellow tape with a little bunch of holes in it, and it would go, and that's the way we ordered. Then we moved up about 5 years later to a fax machine, and we all just stood at it like, wow, look at that. And now today we do stuff on our telephones.
Well, the biggest difference between, you know, how the business was run back in 1993, 94, in those first years here, between it is now is we are much more growth oriented, which we have to be as an employee-owned company. The biggest change in the company that I've seen kind of visually is just our work environment, you know, where we are, our facility now compared to the facility when we started. I don't know how many square feet that facility was, but it couldn't have been more than about maybe 4,000 square feet. The floors in the shop were all pitted, and stuff from working on forklift batteries and chargers, and it's quite honestly, it's just a cleaner working environment now. We have nice offices. You know, when you have 60 plus employees of the company compared to 12, it's just it's a completely different working environment. But all along, we've still been able to maintain those values that we founded our company on, our mission statement. It's all remained constant throughout all those years. Since I've started here, technology has changed. Well, internally, technology. this goes around almost a funny story too, is, you know, we had computers up in the office, you know, with the green screens, and that's where all the accounting and stuff got done. But I remember when the service department in 1994, we got our first computer laptop to bring into the field to do our inspection or preventive maintenance with. And we shared this laptop. And it was probably about that thick, and it was very heavy. But I remember that being, everything prior to that had been on paper. And here we are, we had this computer. Nobody had an email address. In fact, I'm not even sure if email existed in 1993 or 94. But we've gone from there, and then what a big deal it was when everybody at HM Cragg got an HM Cragg email address.
The biggest change I think I've seen at HM Cragg has been the engagement of the employees and just the involvement and I think direct connection people feel that they have on the end results.
Probably one of the biggest changes I've seen over the years since I've been here is as the market gets more competitive, we've had to be more creative and how we become a virtual company. You know, we hire a lot of people, we add new business units, acquisitions, and you know, we have to be creative and be ready to hire people any part of the country. And so, you know, we've had to have our processes and our technology be able to support that. And I think that's one of the biggest changes is we have to be creative to, you know, make the organization's needs fit the employees' needs as well and be able to get the best people at the best time and place.
The biggest change is we've turned from a company that was rather sleepy and had limited growth, and we've really become a company that has taken off. We were already an ESOP, but I think we became an ESOP with an intent on growth and with an intent to ultimately provide more opportunity and more wealth in the pocketbooks of the people that work here. And we certainly did well in that over the last number of years, and that's continued even since I've left. So I'm really pleased with the trajectory of HM Cragg, and I think all employee owners ought to feel good about it too.
One time Bill Ruva and I were out in North Dakota, and it was spring of the year, I guess, and we were driving south out of Minot, North Dakota, heading into Bismarck. And Bill always had 2 or 3 speeding tickets in his pocket. He was pretty well noted for that. And we were flying down Highway 83, and all of a sudden the car just started to shimmer and shake, and I thought we were going to lose a front wheel. We stopped. I said, Bill, stop the car, something's going on out there. And Bill was never too mechanically inclined, and he was kind of oblivious to anything like that. So I started looking at the front tires, and this was back in the day when the tires were all that bias ply, and there were threads, where the rubber had worn away. There was just raw threads hanging there, and we were, you know, cruising down the highway at 80, 85 miles an hour and trying to get to Bismarck. So after I determined that we had some tire issues, I said, Bill, the first place we come to that looks like might have tires for sale, we better stop. And it was either at a J.C. Penney or a Sears and Roebuck back then, and they had a service center there. And he bought 4 new tires that night. Kind of feared for my life as we were going down the road.
Okay, one of the funniest or craziest things that I remember here at HM Cragg is the event that we had on Lake Minnetonka dog sledding. And one of the salespeople, Ron Piersky, came in his dress shoes and dress clothes and was not prepared for the coldest day that we had that year.
There's been quite a few funny things that have happened at HM Cragg over the years. Many of the ones that I've witnessed have been in the service department, and quite honestly, some of them I probably won't talk about here. But one that always sticks out in my mind, and still to this day when I think about it, I laugh and brings tears to my eyes. There used to be a gentleman that worked here by the name of Mark Anderson, and we were at a job site, and it was the middle of winter, and it was pretty slippery outside. And I forget exactly what it was we were talking about, but he was walking along, he had his jacket on, it was a down jacket, he had his hands in his pockets, and we were outside, and he goes, well, I don't want to look like an idiot. And right as he said that, he slipped on the ice, and he fell over like a weeble with his hands still in his pockets, and landed on the ground. And myself and Joe Burge were both standing there, and I think we probably laughed for 20 minutes. It was hilarious. He was okay. He didn't get hurt. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been a funny story. But yeah, it was pretty funny.
I think the funniest thing that happened probably would be a tie between the two Siegfrieds. When Jeff in the warehouse over at the old building hit the fire extinguisher and all this black stuff started spewing all over the warehouse, was really funny. And then, the first one to bail out was Barb. She wanted nothing to do with any kind of a warehouse flood, so she left the building. I think the other really funny thing that happened at HM Cragg was here in this building, and there was this strange odor that nobody could figure out where it was coming from. So we actually called, I believe it was the fire inspector or somebody, to come in and take a look at where this was coming from, and we thought there were some people who were handling food that had just moved into the space right next door, and we thought maybe some of that was rotting and it was coming over the top, and that wasn't it. But lo and behold, what he finally found was this strange looking tub of stuff underneath Jill's desk, which actually was rotten chicken that she had had under her desk for like 3 weeks. And the container couldn't contain it anymore, and it darn near poisoned all the rest of us from the smell.
I don't have a lot of funny stories, but I've been the object of many a funny story, and I'm sure that you guys are all going to hear about the chicken incident if you haven't already, so we'll just kind of let that one mellow.
The biggest challenge that HM Cragg has had to overcome, and we work every single day to overcome this challenge, is the fact that we are an employee-owned company. And by nature, as an employee-owned company, you want to protect that stock price. You want to, and so you tend to have a very conservative nature about you. But at the same time, we, as an employee-owned company, we have to grow in order for the business to succeed and for that stock price to increase in value, which is what we all want. So your knee-jerk is to be conservative, but you keep reminding yourself that you do have to not be quite so conservative, take some risk, reasonable risk, and that it's a daily thing that we have to overcome, and keep reminding ourselves that we do have to grow.
Well, probably one of the biggest challenges is, again, as our business and our industry becomes more competitive, we have to have a little different approach to growth, and with that different approach to growth comes a different risk tolerance. The one way to grow a company is organically, just sell more of what we're already doing, and that doesn't always work year after year. So we've had to have a different risk tolerance to do acquisitions like Ash Battery, Standby Power in Chicago, starting new business lines like Generac. So we have to be a little more creative, and with that we have to be able to also have the processes and technology and the infrastructure to be able to support that. So I think those things go hand in hand, and I think we've done pretty well over the years in being ready to make that investment in additional people and in business units and facilities.
I think the biggest challenge that we had to face was the belief by the people that we could become more than what we were. We had been relatively flat in terms of revenue. We had been constricted really to various lines of business and really didn't think much about growth. And the thought of growth and really putting the mind in the minds of all the people that was something that would ultimately benefit the company was difficult to overcome at first. But once we began to get a track record, year-over-year growth, whether it be revenue or profit, that we could actually handle the growth, manage the growth, and be a company that was on the rise, I think the success ultimately won everybody over. And they wanted to go to the next level and the next level. And that has fueled the growth of HM Cragg over the last number of years.
Oh, some of our fondest memories were the camaraderie between our small group at the time. You know, there was definitely nothing formal about the company at the time. And then just the way I was mentored, if you would, working with Bill Ruva primarily in the motive power side of the business, and some real interesting experiences working with him, especially in the outstate area.
I can go back to times at which we won a project, and not just in the service department, it could be anywhere. You know, specifically I remember, and this was back, I hadn't been at HM Cragg very long, and Dale Jones won a very large project, and I wish I could remember who it was with, but I remember the screaming and yelling and the high fives and stuff like that. And so really my fondest memories are the victories.
The fondest memories I have of HM Cragg is how they treat you like your family versus just an employee. When any employee that I've seen needed any help, HM Cragg was right there to support them in many different ways over the years. If they needed anything extra, they're right there by their side, which I am really impressed with.
My fondest memory of working with HM Cragg would be, I guess, every year for the all-employee meetings. It's been fun to get to know the remote people. I'm here every week, but I don't get to see the remote people until those events, and to see the number of people grow year after year has been really fun.
My fondest memory of HM Cragg was probably when we became a distributor and you could see how big the company was going to possibly get.
My fondest memory of my time here at HM Cragg would have to be when we're all here together and we brought everyone in from, you know, all the outside offices, and we go and we do something good like feed my starving children or packing food at the food shelf. Those are really great, and I can't wait to do more of that with everyone. One thing that I kind of wanted to share with everyone is how much HM Cragg has meant to our family. I mean, both Jeff and I, when Jeff started working here, had been out of work for a really long time. And it was so wonderful to come and work for a company that really seemed to care about us. They let me work from home for years until my kids went to school, which, had I not been able to do that, would have just really hurt us. And so I'm super grateful for how much everyone seems to really care about each other here and how much they love each other. I think it's really important.
If I can lump the people as the fondest memory, the one fondest memory, when I left and retired out of HM Cragg, the one thing I missed was the daily interaction with the people here. There are an incredibly large number of very good people, and I will always count the relationships and friendships that I had with the people at HM Cragg as my fondest memory.
The 50th anniversary for HM Cragg Company is kind of a phenomenal thing. Number one, not a whole lot of companies get to this point. Number two, very few if any, rep firms or companies have a history with our vendors like we do with C&D, for example. We're almost an anomaly in the industry. We've repped a company for so many years.
HM Craig's 50th year anniversary, it just makes me feel secure that the company's been around that long, through economic highs and lows, and just a good feeling that it's been around that long.
HM Craig's 50th anniversary means a lot to me. Knowing this company has been around for 50 years, that's a great accomplishment, and hopefully it's around for 50 more years, even though I won't be here then.
Our 50th anniversary, I think, is a great milestone to show the legacy of Harold Cragg and Bill Ruva establishing a good business on good foundation, good principles, and it's just passed the test of time.
HM Craig's 50th anniversary, to me, personally, you know, it's kind of the time at which I have been here 50% of the time that HM Cragg has existed, starting in 1993. So, but the other thing is it is really nice to be able to sit in front of a customer and to tell them, well, HM Cragg, we've been around for 50 years. We've maintained our core values. We can point to our mission statement. And it's really comforting to be able to tell a customer that we're a real company. We've been around a long time. We do things the right way. And it's a good story to be able to tell, because much of our competition has been around for a much shorter period of time. HM Cragg is very blessed to have had the people in leadership here that we have had over the years, from our founder, Harold Cragg, and then Ben Platter, who was able to look at the company when he felt it was time for him to retire and say, I need to, you know, I hired all these people and I want to make sure they all have their jobs. And he turned us into an employee-owned company. From there to Paul Hagestad, to Jim Smiley. You know, Jim, when he first came on, I think he would tell you that there was a lot of skepticism. I myself went to him and said, how are you going to maintain our values and our culture around here? And he said it's top of his mind, and he did. And then now Tony Wand. And we have been very fortunate to have extremely good leadership of this company.
50 years with HM Cragg, to me, means security and longevity. I mean, I can see myself being here for another 20 years and retiring from here. And I'm super excited to see what the future is going to bring for HM Cragg. It also means that we're a family. This is a long-lived company, and I think we're all going to continue to care about each other for a really long time. And like I said, I'm just super excited to see what the next 50 years has in store for us.
HM Craig's 50th anniversary means so much to me. I think it speaks to the growth, the longevity of the organization, the loyalty that people have had, the success of the organization, and really the legacy of Harold Cragg. I'm so excited to be a part of it, and I can't wait to celebrate with all the employee owners here.
So 50 years is a really big deal. There aren't many companies anywhere that can say that they've been around for 50 years or more, and we built a great legacy over the years of taking care of our customers, great customer service along the way. We've got 2 employees that are over 40 years, and not many companies can say that. Dale and Roger are both 40, 41-year employees. We've got a number of 15, 20, 25-year employees as well. And we became an ESOP in the mid-2000s, and there's less than 10,000 ESOPs in the whole country. So it's a pretty big deal that we're an ESOP, and it's a special situation. As an ESOP, employee owners should truly feel like they own the company, because they do, And we like to think that when people come into work every day, day in and day out, that maybe there's just a little extra TLC for the company as an owner. And so, all the people that have been a part of HM Cragg over the 50 years should be proud of not only where the company has come from, but also the opportunities that are ahead of us. It's pretty exciting, what's ahead.
There aren't a lot of companies that make 50 years in business. And the first thing I think about when I think about 50 years is the wonderful opportunity that I got to meet Harold Cragg. And Harold was just a true gentleman, a guy who had an idea, started a business, ran the business, and eventually, the business that bears his name is nowhere close to what he would have ever envisioned, but that's the beauty of it. So the change from 50 years ago to now, I think, is remarkable. The ownership over 50 years, Harold Cragg, then a guy named Ben Platter, and then there were others, including Dale and Roger and others who owned pieces of the company, to now where it's employee owned. Really 3 generations or different kind of generations of leadership and owning the company. And over the course of 50 years to have that consistency of ownership and then also leadership, and to the fact that this company is not only in existence today, but in existence and thriving after 50 years is really remarkable. The other thing I remember is I wasn't here at the time, but Harold's daughter came and visited, and she knew what the company was like way back when, and the change from then to now is staggering and is a tribute to all the good people who work at HM Cragg.